And welcome to MacBreak Studio Live. We are here in beautiful Petaluma, California. My name is Mark Spencer. With me is Steve Martin.
Good to see you. Good.
And this show is our 1 year anniversary, really.
Well, not quite.
Not quite.
Let's see. Apple released Final Cut Pro 10.0.0 on June 21st,
right.
And that was, I think, a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Tuesday.
Yeah.
And we were up here on Thursday.
Thursday, yeah. 2 days later, right.
So we were up here doing our flagship MacBreak Studio show.
MacBreak Video Live.
This is a live show on Thursday. So yes, it's pretty much the year anniversary.
Been a year.
So happy anniversary to us.
So if you are joining us for the first time, or even if you're not, this show is for you, about your questions. We have a few things to kick things off, but we're interested in knowing what you want to know about, what you want to hear about. And to that end, there's a place you can click over here. I'm kind of pointing towards Steve. You should see in your window where you can sign in if you haven't signed in yet. And that gives you an opportunity to ask questions that will show up on our iPad here. And you can also vote questions up and down. If you see a question in there already that you want answered, vote that up. And we'll look at it, and we'll do our best to answer it. So please do sign in and get things kicked off here. So interesting times. Yes. So also, if you are trying to watch this on an iOS device, you haven't been able to do that until now. So before you had to watch it on a Mac or a PC. But now there's an iOS link that I just sent out on my Twitter feed, which is... and Pixel Core as well. So if you follow at Markspen, MarkSpen, or if you follow Pixel Core, you'll see that link for the iOS feed. And you can click there and you can watch on your iPad or your iPhone. So here we are, one year later. It's been a tumultuous year. Well,
tumultuous in the sense that it's been a very vocal year for people opining about what they think about Final Cut Pro 10. And, I think for the most part, you still have a camp of people, a tribe of people that just consider it, iMovie-like, and it's such a radical departure from the track-based paradigms that they're comfortable with, the workflows they're comfortable with, that they just can't get into it.
It is radically different, but we've also seen, what's been amazing is the frequency of updates, because we've seen literally just almost to the day every 3 months we've gone from 10.0.0 June 21st last year all the way up to now we're at 10.0.4 just in the past couple months, right? So we've had these 4 separate updates over the course of a year, less than a year.
Right. It's Apple's the big question was, is Apple committed to the professional video editor? And I think they demonstrated certainly by their frequency of updates that they are. And they, it's unprecedented. It's non-Apple-like to telegraph their intentions every release. Okay, they release something and say, okay, well, next, look for this. That's what they did.
Yeah, they've been saying them. Saying here's a couple new features that will be coming out. They did it with multicam, and now they're doing it with whatever comes after. I would assume 10.0.5 with the features they've talked about that should be coming out in that release.
Well, I wanted to finish a thought. What I was saying is that yes, there is kind of a pro consensus. I mean, if you read certain blogs, that you just can't work with it in a professional milieu. You can't share things. You can't do this. You can't work collaboratively. You can't. And, frankly, people that are saying that just actually haven't used it in a kind of a collaborative workflow. You could see from their updates, we have a list here going back from, version 1, and then we're approaching version 10.0. Well, 5 will be the next one.
Probably, if history holds and sequential numbers continue,
Yeah, but I'm looking at the list here. These are not small incremental updates. These are major features. 1.01 they introduced, that was September 20th. That was only a few months after they initially released it. There was roles, XML support, certain functionalities with transitions, CPU accelerated. There's a whole list of things that they did. Then there was a bug fix around November 16th.
Right, a couple of those 4 releases. Only 2 of them were had significant new features. I think 10.0.2 and 10.0.4 were more sort of some little behind the scenes performance improvements, bug fixes, and a couple other things that they threw in there.
10.03 was the most significant release, in my opinion,
right?
Because the multicam was huge, and I was going on record to saying that I think Apple's implementation of multicam is the absolute best implementation. I've used them all, and they all basically suck compared to Final Cut Pro 10's multicam.
And to be fair, when Final Cut Pro 10 first came out, there were a lot of people for whom they could not use it. I mean, even if they wanted to, there were certain things that they had a shop that depended on multicam, and it wasn't there. There's certain things that had to be there. So there was this part of this thing that it was a complete change, a complete paradigm shift. I got to learn something new. Part of it was okay, you can no longer get Final Cut 7, and part of it was there's key chunks of functionality that they need to have, and that seems to be over time. Those pieces seem to be showing up, which seems to be moving in the right direction.
Right. I mean, but to be fair, from taking kind of red hat, blue hat, good black spy, white spy. If I'm on this side, I could see certain people saying, "Oh, this just doesn't jibe with how I'm used to working." I can't work with this because it doesn't have these tracks. It doesn't have. It's just a kind of a comfort zone. I don't feel comfortable in it. It just seems like it's. It doesn't have the order. It's more chaotic, it seems like. When you jump into Final Cut Pro, there's no track. You just throw things in, you connect things. You look at a linear editor, it's very ordered. It's very structured. Where you can see all of your graphics track. You can see all your music. You can see all your effects. Everything's kind of laid out. And when you look at Final Cut Pro's timeline, it looks chaotic. It's like, gosh, you could have audio up here, down here, all over the place. That's disconcerting for some of what I would say the old guard. They're not used to that sense of chaos in the interface.
And to me, it's weird now going back and forth because I've had several jobs recently that required Final Cut Pro 7 because there was another editor doing Final Cut 7, or they wanted the project delivered on Final Cut 7. So there's a lot of people are still, some people switch to other platforms, some people are just waiting to see what happens, and there's a lot of people just still using Final Cut 7, and I've had to go back and forth between them, and that's really shows you how different it is because you get used to Final Cut 10. It takes a while because it's definitely the magnetic timeline, the trackless timeline, dealing with events and metadata is so radically different. But then you start used to it, and then you go back to Final Cut 7 for something, and it's like, first of all, I like it because I remember all the keyboard shortcuts, that are still there. But at the same time, I'm now it's much slower. It's clunky to me, but it makes it very clear how radically different they are from each other.
Right, but it's interesting. I've done a number of workshops and. Since the release, and my informal poll is how many people have used to Final Cut 10, switched to Final Cut 10. A lot of people are still in kind of wait mode. A year later, there's still tons and tons of people who haven't switched. They're still on Final Cut 7. The fact is, Final Cut Pro 7 is a robust editor. It works great, and people are comfortable, and people aren't. It seems like they're just kind of wait mode, wait and see. And of course, Adobe released Premiere 6, and it's been getting a lot of kudos. And it's some people have been calling it Final Cut 8, which it's not. But I can see again the people that are familiar with that track-based paradigm. It's comfortable. It doesn't take a lot of training to go from here to here. One of the posts I read a lot on the different forums, Creative Cow and whatnot, is I'm really fast and efficient in this track-based modality. I can work fast, keyboard shortcuts that you said, and now in Final Cut 10, it's so radical that I have to take the time to essentially relearn how to do basic things.
Well, but that's true whether you are going to Final Cut 10 or you're going to Avid or you're going to Premiere.
But it's really, what they're saying, it's radically to the point of not even apples and oranges.
But it's funny because it's forcing everybody to learn something new, whether they're going to 10 or they're going to another platform. Everybody is faced with this okay, I've got to break down and learn something new now, which isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of a fact of life. And now Apple's done something pretty radical. We actually have bunch of questions flowing in.
Okay. All right, great.
And we'll see.
If you see, by the way, if you see my head turn there, my computer screen is over screen left here, and this is where we're going to drive the interface.
Yes, and we still want to see. I have a request for some of the crew if they could turn off this hard drive. And can you eject that hard drive? They could turn it off and plug it back in. Maybe if you go to the desktop to bring it. Yeah.
There we go.
And eject that. So we have a few little technical issues because we want to do a little bit of demo today. We want to show you a few things, a few tips. Wait, it's not ejected yet. So you could eject, bring it. So a couple of questions here. One is a comment about the iOS stream, that it's fine, but it's 40 seconds behind the other stream, the web-based stream. So just for folks to know about that, there seems to be a delay on the iOS stream. So don't try to go back and forth between the two because it'll be confusing. You can I just want you to plug it back in and turn it back on again, and we'll see if it works out correctly. So that's that. Workflow question. Okay.
Right, workflow question.
Happy anniversary. Thank you, Sue Mitchell. Thank you. I have a series of 20 shows across several external drives. I need to build a promo using clips from all. Is there an easy way to access the material without having all 20 events open at the same time? So I guess she's saying she's got material in 20 separate events across.
Well, my question is, why do they need to be in 20 separate events? Why don't you make one single, what I call super event, and import all of your media using the option in the import preferences to actually not copy the media. So essentially, you can have all your media in all these different places, and then all of that event would then point to where all that media is on those various platters. And that way you don't have separate events. Everything's in that one event.
So create one event and just grab from all those other events the clips that you want.
Well, not events. No, she's saying that she already has, may I understand Sue's question, let's have 5 events. Each with different medium. What she's saying is all those events have to be mounted and opened inside the event library.
She wants to grab clips across all of them to build something.
Right.
So what's the most efficient way for her to do that?
Well, okay, then let's back up. If the events are already created, which it sounds like they are, there's no way around. You can consolidate. You can make an event and then
merge the events.
You can merge them into a single event. That would be one way to do it, and that way you don't have one event. A bunch of events. I personally don't have a problem with the number of events existing in the event library, but you can make one super event. Or, as I was saying, if you know ahead of time that you're going to have drive media on all kinds of different drives, just make one event and import the media as SIMs or
without
references without copying them. And then you essentially have one super event that's keeping track of where all that media is all over your different drive platters.
Awesome. So, in fact, we also today have been shooting a bunch of our weekly shows.
Yes, we have.
One of them speaks specifically to workflow. Steve, did you want to talk about workflow and talking about moving projects, moving events, having multiple editors share projects, share events. So definitely look forward for that because that's...
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the... I was talking about today on the show, this meme, which is this idea that gets transmitted through the various social networks that the meme could be Final Cut Pro 10 does not, you can't share project files. Let's just say that, because that's something that's kind of a persistent just misnomer. Really, it's just incorrect. You can share a project. In fact, I did a workflow doing that today, where you can actually create and share products one to the other. And you can actually email project files to each other, open up and have all of your edit data there. And you can, and it works pretty much the same way it worked when we were working with Final Cut Pro 7 project files.
Right. So. Could you launch Motion? Because there's a Motion-related question here, stuff that launched up. And actually a couple questions here. So a couple Motion-related questions. Is there any way to control a path's control point with a parameter behavior? So in other words, when you have a path, can you need your...
I need my drive. I'm going to plug in another drive. That one's not just...
Yeah, it's just not getting recognized. No. So you can control a parameter behavior can be used to control a control point of a shape or a mask for For a motion path, I don't believe so, but you can definitely, instead of a motion path, you just create a shape and use that as your source for your motion path. And all you need to do is add the parameter behavior, and then you can actually turn off, and I just actually have a brand new tutorial about shapes, paint strokes, and masks, and goes into detail about this, how you can create like an oscillate parameter behavior.
Right.
Or a wriggle parameter behavior, and you can apply it to the points of a shape.
You can't create that right now, can you?
Yeah, I probably could. We'll see if we're up and running okay, because there's another question on here I want to answer as well. And we'll see if I can do that. But the answer is yes, you can do that. And if we have time, I'll demo that. But there's another question here that's kind of interesting. He says, when do you think Motion 5 will be updated to be a full screen app? And that's Jared. So it's kind of an interesting question, because it's sort of, Motion was full screen all the time. It still is full screen, but the way it does full screen now is different. So if we press F8 to get full screen, this is what, I don't know, do we have the computer up on where folks can see it? Yeah, we do. There it is. So somebody press F8 again to get out of that. So here's a normal motion interface. I'm going to press F8. This is full screen, but I understand the argument that it's not full screen because we see interface elements now. And before, full screen meant no interface elements. It really got rid of everything and just showed you, what you were playing. And now this full screen shows you the transport controls and the toolbar at the bottom. So that's a change from Motion 4 to Motion 5. It's a change that not everybody likes. And in terms of when do you think it will be updated to be a full screen app, I don't know if it'll ever be. And anytime a question starts with, when do you think Apple will do something, the answer is always, we don't know. Anybody who knows can't say, and anybody who says doesn't know. So, but I understand that doesn't do a full screen like it used to. Here's a question from Michael. Am I overlooking an ability to eject drives while Final Cut Pro 10 is open? Oh, man. We were just talking about this.
I know.
We were just talking about this. I have to quit, eject, and reopen Final Cut Pro 10 regardless of whether there's any event or clip I'm using on the drive. That has been my experience. Is that your experience as well,
we were just talking about that today. You can't eject a drive with Final Cut. It would be very nice if you could.
And actually, part of the theme of our conversation today is the fact that we're here a year into Final Cut Pro 10. We've seen all of these updates happening, a lot of great new features, and there's still stuff we'd like to see. Right? There's still things that are either minor annoyances, major annoyances, or for some people they're showstoppers. And part of the thing we'd like to hear from everybody is those things that you find are your perception of Final Cut Pro 10 in terms of what's stopping you from trying it, or you've been using it and there's certain things that are major kind of showstoppers for you. And we have our own list of things that for us, we'd love to see, but we'd like to hear from you as well. And that is certainly one of them, is the ability to eject a drive. Because sometimes you need to run out, you got a drive that does not have any events on it, and you just need to take it with you, and you've got to quit Final Cut Pro in order to do that. So if there is another way around that we don't know of, let us know, because that would be fantastic. Motion 5 on dual monitors. Yes, you can. We don't have it set up here, but you can split Motion over dual monitors. There's a command that will allow you to take the canvas or the timeline and move it to another monitor. So you certainly can do that with Motion 5. This is a question about Final Cut Pro 10 with Ken Burns effect.
Okay.
Using the Ken Burns effect, it automatically uses an ease-in, ease-out path. Can this be changed? I cannot find a way to make it an even linear path, short of building it in Motion. Thanks for all the tips and content.
Nope.
Thanks from Scott Phillips. Yeah, there's actually a couple limitations on that, right? So you can't change how it eases, and you can't make it do it sooner. It just goes to the very end.
I have a way around that. I'll show you as soon as we get Final Cut Pro up. There's a really great trick.
Oh, great. There's also FX Factory has a free pan and zoom plugin.
They do, but what I was saying is you can apply a Ken Burns effect and actually change the speed over time.
Can you make it finish before the end of the clip?
We'll
see.
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a little limited in that respect.
Right.
Totally understand that. How about you, Steve? What kind of things are you really looking forward to going forward in Final Cut Pro 10?
Well, there are some things I'd like to see. I mean, I have a kind of a list that we've kind of compiled for Final Cut Pro. I'll just kind of from the top. One of the big ones is the copy paste attributes. People want to be able to copy and then paste just certain attributes to a clip. I think that's a really great feature request.
Go ahead.
Because right now, when you copy a clip, let's say with a filter and maybe some animation or what have you, and then paste it, it'll paste it to the target clip. Everything. And then whatever was on that target clip gets completely blown away.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. If you've got a filter on a clip and you copy paste something else, it gets rid of that filter that's on there.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Some other ones, timeline scrolling, the little things are the timeline updates as the playhead moves, which Motion even does.
Yes.
Right?
Well, Motion has a preference where you can turn on timeline scrolling. That's true. That's true.
GarageBand
That would be a nice thing to see.
iMovie does it. Why doesn't Final Cut Pro tend to do it? So that's a little thing. Let's see. I would like to see project markers. So markers would actually appear in the ruler of the timeline. So when you export it from Final Cut Pro 10, you would actually get chapter markers.
You don't need to go to compressor and import a list in order to do all your chapters.
Exactly.
Right.
The other thing I'd like to see, since we're talking about it, is the ability to set a range and say, just export this amount from the Final Cut project. I don't want to export the entire project. Certainly I could send it to compressor and then set in and out points, but I don't want to do that. I just want to set an in and out point in Final Cut and send that little range out to a standalone movie.
Yep.
I mean, that would be very handy.
Yeah. There's a couple things like that that they seem like so common. You know, one thing we could do is copy the project and events off that hard drive to the local drive.
I've actually started doing that. Yeah, exactly.
Because then they should show up in there. We're getting there. We're having, of course, always little technical difficulties getting this thing up and running. So we can do a little demo here. But I can still show a few things that we talked about that don't require Final Cut. I've learned the power of compound clips. Compound clips are awesome, aren't they? They've so many uses for compound clips. Really kind of like nested sequences.
They're actually a lot more powerful than just compound clips. There's so much you can do with them.
He says, Chris, I don't know if it's a he or not, but Chris says, do the two of you use projects? The two of you use projects. I use them in lieu of projects. Oh, I see. So what he's doing is using a compound clip instead of a project. He's just using the compound clip to build things.
That's correct. That's one way to do it.
Yeah. The only thing is if you're doing that, you're creating them in an event, and they're all sitting in the events, and you don't have anything in your project library.
Well, one way to work would be to actually create the project inside the event library and build it.
Right, as a compound clip.
As a compound clip, exactly. In fact, you don't even need any content in there. I'm going to have to start from scratch here because I have no idea what's on this drive, and it's like crazy. All right, so...
So it didn't copy any of that stuff over, projects and media?
It is. It's a mess.
How about under project libraries or anything? Any of the projects copied over? Because the events are there.
Yeah.
But how about the projects?
All right. Let's see here.
Yeah. There's a few things showing up. That's old stuff. That's not ours. Yeah, you copied the project folder as well?
I copied it in here. So, by the way, let's do some relinking since we're here. I'm going to go ahead and let's see here.
Relink the project media.
Relink the project.
So yeah, we can show this. So we've had to move a bunch of material over. We have a hard drive that's not being recognized by Final Cut Pro right now. Even though you can see it's called Bring It. It's on the desktop there.
Yeah, there's actually a better way to do this. You can actually, a faster way to relink instead of relinking everything. One of the first things, in fact, I get emails about this all the time. There's some confusion about relinking. The first thing, what you need to understand about these projects is that they're all looking to a specific event library. For some reason, this particular edit got lost, and it's not connecting with all the media in this event. So the first place you should look when you're trying to reconnect is this inspector over here, or the inspector, and the first place should be modify event references to see if it even sees it. And it says it found it, and then we click OK. And a lot of times when you do that, it'll then reconnect, but it's not doing it here for whatever reason.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Just took a minute.
See, that's a very important thing.
That was great. Rather than go reconnect media.
No, your first line of defense should always be check the project, and then point it to an event. Once it finds the event, that's the beauty of Final Cut Pro. You don't have to look for, hunt and, search and destroy mission or to find individual clips. You just say, this is the event, there it is, it reconnects everything. So
we see a little work on with Laconda as well.
I don't even know if I don't think I even moved it. But one thing is that, it says that here it says Laconda original, a missing event.
Yeah.
So if you go in here, the event's not even there.
You might not have copied it over.
Yeah,
So while you're doing that, what are some of your favorite third-party effects for Final Cut Pro 10? Do you have any favorites for motion?
Let's see, it's interesting here. Well, it's funny. I don't use a ton of effects. I just don't. Some of the stuff I do, I mean, I'm just not the person to ask. I don't. I don't use a lot of transitions. I don't, filter stuff up. I just a lot of my storytelling is mostly straight cuts, and maybe I'll use a color corrector, but I just don't throw a bunch of eye candy on my clips. So.
It really depends on the type of stuff you're doing, right?
It just depends.
Because there's a huge amount of third-party support. That's one thing if we're looking back over the course of the year in terms of what has come to market in the third-party development community to support Final Cut Pro 10. So we've seen Sapphire plugins. We've seen FX Factory from Noise Industries have a huge number of products and plugins for Final Cut Pro 10.
Yep.
And across the board, we've seen a large number of developers who support Final Cut Pro 10, which is there's a massive amount of stuff to choose from. And in fact, we have this plugin called Callouts, which is developed in Motion because Motion now is a development environment for making. So now, what I like about it, I don't know how to code anything, but I could actually create a plugin for Final Cut Pro 10 using Motion as a development tool.
Right.
So it opens up the possibilities for what you can make, effects you can make for Final Cut in a huge way. So there's a slew of products for doing any kind of transitions, any kind of color corrections, titling, a large number of third-party products out there right now. But I'm the same as you. I have a ton that I haven't tried yet, that I just haven't gotten to. I've got them all installed and meaning to try them out. But often, especially if I'm sharing projects, I tend to default to what I know the other person is going to have. So I tend to default to the default what's built in there. Why can't we have dynamic link for motion in Final Cut Pro 10? So let me change the words dynamic link to round tripping. Dynamic link is more of an Adobe term.
That was one of the things that we had on the list is the ability to essentially round trip, which means start with a motion project in your primary storyline, jump into motion, do some effects, come back to Final Cut, and those changes that you made in motion would show up inside Final Cut Pro. And I would agree that would be something that I found to be really useful. You've been saying that you would like that for a long time.
I would. I think in some ways. So there's situations where it would be useful. There's some situations where you don't need to anymore. For instance, in Final Cut 7 and Motion 4, you might be doing an interview and you had a talking head and you wanted a lower third. And you wanted to design the lower third yourself in the context of seeing that person.
Right.
So you would send that clip from Final Cut to Motion so you could design in context.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. But what you can do is the titles in the titles browser in Final Cut Pro are extremely malleable and customizable. So right in Final Cut Pro, you can put titles on your Final Cut Pro timeline in context and design that title in context. You can choose font and color and size and animation type and background type. So I think what some people don't realize is that the titles that are built in are not sort of like one size fits all. It's just stock. All those can be manipulated quite a bit. And my guess is that part of the design philosophy was why even round trip? Allow the user to do everything right in Final Cut Pro 10. Right. Of course, the problem is if you want to track a shot, you can't send a clip to track it. I mean, that's sort of the big thing. So yeah, I would love to see at least some rudimentary round tripping capability return.
Ergo dynamic linking, which is Adobe's terminology. Yeah. That would be good.
So it looks like you have a sequence.
Yeah, we have a sequence.
A project. Well, I'm still a year later, and I'm still using this Final Cut Pro 7 terminology. So I
definitely have it open here.
Okay.
And one of the things that's coming is a more audio functionality, and the thing is about Final Cut Pro 10, it has a lot of powerful audio capability built into it.
Yeah, we did a bunch of episodes today about what you can do with audio.
Yeah, I mean, here's an example. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. And I don't know if you hear, Here, I don't know if you can hear this, but I lost the waveforms not being written on the screen here. Let me go here. By the way, when I work with audio, I tend to like to work in this mode with I can see just the audio waveform.
Right, nice big waveform.
Right.
Sometimes I make it even huger when I'm editing a lot of audio.
Yeah.
I just taller. Maybe that's the tallest already in here, but
yeah. So there you have the clip. And one of the things that's really nice is if you wanted to do replacement of something, one of the things I was showing that's, I think, really powerful. Let's say this is a sound you want to remove here. One of the nice features in Final Cut Pro, I think one of the most powerful features is clip skimming. Because what's clip skimming in is your mouse pointer could be either in the primary storyline or it could be in the actual clip. So if I'm skimming and I want to pull something out, I skim, and right there I want to make a cut, I just hit Command B. So it honors where the skimmer is.
So, but only with clip skimming on,
right? So
then your command will affect
so
whatever connected clip your clip is instead of the primary storyline.
Right. So if you're just using the skimmer.
So if clip skimming is turned off,
clip skimming. So when I hit Command B, it's going to do primary storyline. But with clips, like right now, nothing is selected. Notice I'm just skimming.
Yeah.
Right. And then when I hit Command B. What did it cut?
Oh,
it cut the primary storyline.
Because clip skimming is turned
right,
off.
So I think clip skimming is really handy because that way you can just, wherever your mouse pointer is, you just skim, and wherever your mouse pointer is, you just blade it there. So you can skim, blade, skim, blade.
Yep.
So it's a very, very fast way of locating content and cutting it out. The other thing that's really nice is the range selection tool. Let's say you had some ambience you wanted to remove, you wanted to move around. The range selection tool. Let's say this is some area that I wanted to copy somewhere else. So I'm going to select it and hit Command C, and then skim. Let's say I wanted to paste that section over here. Maybe it's some ambience or what have you. Mm-hmm. There's this great feature up here called Paste as Connected, Option V. What that does is it
paste as connected clip.
Right, paste as connected clip. What that does is it pastes that little selection wherever you want it.
Yeah.
So Option V becomes a very, very, very powerful command when you make a range select copy and then just Option V it, and then you can do a lot with that.
Awesome.
Right. So
we have a lot of questions. A lot of these are very good.
Okay.
So this one's from Alex Gollner, and if you guys don't already know Alex, you definitely want to look at Alex 4D. Just Google Alex 4D. He does a lot of stuff. He wrote a long thing I saw today about his idea for having a Final Cut store within the app, which is kind of interesting as a way to access
a button that just says buy stuff.
Buy stuff, yeah, where you could get tutorials, where you could get effects, where you could get kind of stuff.
Well, I thought like Avid does that. I mean, the Media Composer has something like that where they have all these stock clips, and so you click a button and you have access to all this content.
Yeah, you can get stock video, you can get stock clips.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting idea to have something right in there. Because right now, one thing that's a little bit kludgy is while you've talked about with Final Cut Pro, you can move your events and move your projects and have them live in different places, right?
Yes.
You can share them with other people. It's a little more complicated if you have customized motion effects, because those always have to live in the movies folder and the motion templates folder.
That's a big deal, because if they're not there, and sometimes if you move them there, Final Cut Pro still sometimes has a problem.
Yeah, so that's a piece that's a little difficult when you're trying to wrap up a project and give it to somebody. It's one thing just to give them the events and project files folders, but the motion projects piece of it is more complicated because it can only live in one location, and you have to remember to grab those
in
pieces.
the movies folder motion templates folder,
yeah.
And it has to be in there.
Yep.
And it's at the root drive too. I mean, it's in the boot drive. It's not like that
right.
folder can exist anywhere else. So what I hear you saying is that really motion projects should be able to live anywhere.
Well, ideally, you should be able to put them somewhere and still be able to use them.
Okay.
Right. It's a little bit complicated in order to be able to share projects that have custom motion effects in them.
Yeah.
It's a little complicated.
Okay.
Here's a request for motion, a keyboard shortcut to set the horizontal scale of the timeline. So actually, there is one. There's one. There's only one. So as of Motion 5, if the let's see. So there's nothing in here right now, but let me just put something in here. I'll just hit R for the rectangle tool, and I will trim it to here. I'll hit O. So if the timeline is active, or the canvas, sorry, you hit Shift-Z, the canvas fits the window. If the timeline is active, I'm going to click down here, hit Shift-Z, we see the entire timeline. Let me make it more obvious. I'm going to zoom in. This is where I would like a keyboard shortcut, Command plus or minus. It would be nice to do this.
I've been asking for that since motion 1.
But you can hit Shift-Z, and the timeline will do a fit to window. So it's an improvement that you didn't used to be able to do that. Right. So that's an improvement. But it'd be nice to be able to Command plus minus or something, some modifier to zoom in and out on the timeline on the player location. Totally agree with that. That's good. Oh, working collaboratively. Let's see what he's got to say. This might be a good one based on what you've been talking about. Mark mentioned that when he works with someone else, he tends to default to what they know they will have on their system. If you did build some graphics, how would you share them with your collaborators? Render them out as a title or .move or include the .moti file in the event and project files. So yes and yes. But really, I would give them those project .moti files if it's a title. So yeah, so why don't you go to, show people where this is here. So movies. Users, admin, movies.
Well, if you have
motion templates. Okay, so this is where all the motion effects live, meaning effects, generators, titles, and transitions. So I would give them any customized ones and tell them to place them in those folders.
There's a RT, the 8-point map.
Yeah, there's our little free RT map. By the way, yeah, on rippletraining.com, if you go there, there's a bunch of free effects that we give away, including an 8-point garbage mat, including a drop shadow, sort of some useful general purpose tools that you can download and install in this location.
But the bottom line is that this, like say, this is a custom effect. It has some pieces in it. It's got some media. It's got the MOTI file,
right.
Motion title file. All of this has to end up on the target.
They would need that installed, and then your .moti refers to a motion title project. Right. It could be .moef or .motn or .tr, depending on what it is. But I would give them both pieces, and once they had that, then you can swap stuff back and forth. It just takes a little bit more setup. Kudos to Alex. Alex 4D, your site and your effects are awesome. Yeah, he's good. He just gives away a lot of effects. Good guy. Mark, could you demo how to use behaviors on shape control points? Maybe I'll just show that real quick. Is that okay?
Yep.
So I happen to have a shape here already. Great. It's just kind of small. I'm going to right click on it, choose edit points, and we can see the points. I'm going to, oops, there we go. Make it a little bit bigger.
Kite.
I'll just make it look a little weird here. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is animate it. So there's a couple ways you can do this. So here's all the control points, and you can't apply a parameter behavior directly to the control points. But what you can do is go to Properties, go to Position. I'm right-clicking on the word Position. By the way, you could also just use the menu over here, little animation menu, and I'll add a parameter behavior. I'll add Wriggle. And if we play this now, this little guy is wriggling around, okay? Having a good time. Let's put a play range out point. But the whole thing's moving. So, and we're going to see, maybe I'm going to fail with this, we'll see. I'm going to go to Geometry, and it's not doing it right. I am doing something wrong, and I can't remember what it is. Because I just taught how to do this, and now I can't remember how to do it. Because you can animate this, and then basic idea is the parameter behavior will show, the gear icon will show next to the control points, and you can turn it off for the ones you don't want to affect. And I honestly now don't remember what I did. Oh, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to use my shape parameter behaviors. Okay, shape parameter behaviors, wriggle shape.
That's what it was.
There we go. Okay, so now it's wriggling the whole shape. Let's crank up the frequency so we can really see it jump around. Okay, so now we'll go down to these control points, and we can see that their control points are being, the position is being controlled by this behavior. So you can turn off ones that you don't want to be affected just by clicking on this, and then only the certain ones that are remaining will move.
That's pretty neat.
So that's the basic idea. You have to use one of the shape parameter behaviors to do that. to make it work. One of the shape behaviors. Final Cut Pro feature request. It's a small thing, but I wish I could color code markers and items inside Final Cut Pro 10. I hope they didn't already say this when I was away from my computer. They did not. And you can do it in motion, right? You can have
color-coded markers.
Color-coded markers. Yes.
But right now, the markers that are available in Final Cut are just clip markers. So you can see that they're either red or they're green, and basically you get to them by going to the timeline.
So go to the timeline
index, okay. And then you go to clip. Let's see here. Let's see here. So you select a clip, actually. Just dealing with a small screen here. And let's see, there we are. See, right now, they're just these red markers, and then when you finish them, let's say they're to-do items, so then when you check them off, they become green. And that's it. Two colors, red, say red and green, so now green. But that's it.
But it is nice that you can navigate to those markers right in the timeline.
Yeah, you can just click here and it'll just jump you right to the marker in the timeline. I find it a really, really fast way to get to content.
It's probably a bug, but annoying that while you turn off a clip using rolls, they are still enabled when you export.
Turn off a clip.
If you turn off a roll, it shouldn't be enabled during export. I'm not quite sure what he means about
maybe
turning off a clip.
Maybe some clarification.
Yeah, because if you turn off a specific roll when you export, like you turned off your dialogue in the timeline index,
right?
You turned off all of dialogue.
Well, the first thing is you need to make sure these are tagged properly. And under this clip here, you can say clip. You can say rolls, so you can see how these are tagged.
Beautiful. So now we can see exactly
dialogue, music, effects.
Can you zoom in a little bit on there, so folks? I don't know if they can see.
I can. Yeah. There we go. So you can see that. This shows you how
those are the rolls.
Those are the rolls, and there you can access, the display of them right here. But then, if they're misassigned or what have you, you can select it and you can assign roles. You could say that one at the bottom. That's really an effect, maybe an effect. So, Command Option E, and then it's interesting. It's not.
Didn't change the name.
Should be modify. Let's see. Some edit roles. Sign rolls.
Oh, I see. Get it.
See, it's like there we go. It's like there we go. There you go. Just had to do it again. But the thing is that when the idea with roles, you go through and you're looking, you're tagging these, and then you can essentially highlight the ones that are all effects by clicking here, and it'll just quickly by selecting that, it'll show you all of your items that are tagged with that role. And then when you turn this off, you can then, this is what this does, is I uncheck that.
Yep.
That essentially disables those.
And now when you export, those will not be part of the exported.
I think that's what he's saying. But you can control that. You can control
the export menu.
Through the export menu, right. So when you go up to, let's say, share, export media. I think what he's saying, and I haven't tested this, is that if you go, let's see here.
I'm going to go to where's the rolls?
Let's see. Oops. There it is. Rolls. Rolls is multi-track QuickTime Movie. Rolls is separate files. Okay. So you're setting it up with rolls and say, then you get this button that shows up, and then you could choose from this button. You got to go to this here. Then you could choose what you want exported. So if you have these checked, like if I choose effects right here and click next, those should still be exported.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, that might. I'd have to test it, but according to him, they may, if they're disabled, they won't. But really, that disabling feature is just a way to visually show you, for me, what content I've already gone through, what I've already looked at, what I flagged.
Okay.
It shouldn't affect the exports.
When do y'all think Final Cut Pro 10 will support RED cameras, and what other NLEs support RED?
Natively,
I guess what they're saying, because you can certainly edit with RED, you just have to rewrap, right? You've got to go through RED's application first.
You got to use Red Rocket and transcode the RED files to ProRes. Final Cut Pro right now.
You don't have to use Red Rocket, right? That just makes it go a lot faster.
Yeah, it makes it faster with the card, but it does. But I'm saying that at Final Cut Pro 10, the only way you can work with Red natively. Now, you can't work with it natively. You can only work with it as a ProRes. So you have to transcode it into ProRes. There is no, I mean, you can wrap it all day, but Final Cut Pro is not going to recognize it.
Right.
Well, for that matter, Final Cut Pro 7 never recognized it.
Right.
Just never did.
And it's another, when do you think this will happen?
Well,
which we've said.
I don't know. I mean, according to the last announcement, I mean, this is 10.0.5 or whatever number they're going to designate it. It's going to have, it says here, Red camera support. That's that's on the agenda. But I couldn't even begin to tell you when that's coming.
Right. But they have announced that Red camera support is coming. So
what presumably that means to me is that it doesn't transcode it. You'll be able to wrap our 3D media in some sort of a wrapper and use it natively.
There's a clarification on the roles question. He says, this is Jeff, says, I have 2 versions of titles. Each has a different role. Disabling a title as a role, still export the title. That's not my experience. So, in fact, I have a lesson in the Advanced Final Cut Pro 10 book where I have titles in Spanish and titles in English. And you can choose, I don't turn them off. I choose which ones to export when I do the export dialog box. You can turn which one, but I do. You can also turn them off. So I'll go back and test this again.
Yeah.
But if my memory serves me correct, is you turn that title off, and then only the other one exports. So you can just turn off Spanish and export just English or vice versa. But I'll go back and look at that again. So that's fair enough if he's experiencing that. That question was somebody in Australia. So it's very low. So thank you, Jeff, for hanging out very early in the morning. So here's an offer of some information from Alex Gallner that the free motion template tool from Spherico.com, Spherico, Spherico, can help with transferring custom effects. You export an XML of your current project, and it can interrogate the XML. It can interrogate the XML.
I like that.
To see which custom effects are used. It can then create an installer disk image of all the effects and an install script that puts the effects in the correct places in the movies folder of the destination Mac. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Spherico.com. Free motion template tool. Okay. Alex, we need to get you on the show. Ken Burns. So this is also Alex. He has a smooth move effect that does... moves and rotates between 2 points with control over whether animation eases in or out. So he's got another free effect. Awesome. How can I delete roles from the role editor? Is this currently possible? And we've talked about this.
It's not super easy.
Yeah.
What the basic issue is, let's see, I don't know if you can recreate it, but let's say I create, I have to go to edit roles.
Yeah.
And the assumption I'm going to create, there's a sub-role already created called V1. There's no delete button. In fact, let's go ahead and add a role. Add a role. And see, I can do
or add a new sub-role.
Yeah, do sub-role. I'm going to call this Mark. Right. So there's a sub-role.
Okay.
Notice there is no way to delete these. I mean, I can select delete all day, right?
Yeah.
But notice I was able to delete that one.
Yes. You were able to delete that one.
I was. Here's why.
Why?
Here's why. And this is what you have to understand. Get out your pad, get out your iPad, get your paper, and get ready to write. That role that I just created was not assigned to any clip. The only way you can delete it is you have to go through every clip in your timeline, find a clip through every project that it is applied, and make sure it's not applied, and then and only then can you delete like I just did.
Okay, so you can delete a role if it's not being used anywhere.
That's correct.
On any projects that Final Cut Pro can see. Yeah, interesting, very interesting.
That was a good one.
This is Final Cut Pro 10 effect in motion using behaviors. He says, and this is from Michael, are there limitations on how behaviors transfer from motion to Final Cut Pro 10? For example, I animated a progress bar as a lower third, rendered it out, and applied the behavior hold frame in motion to it. It basically doesn't work. So the answer is that's true. There's certain behaviors that you cannot use when creating effects for Final Cut Pro 10. And basically, retiming behaviors. Things that are temporal in nature.
Right.
And I think it has to do with the fact that effects, titles, etc., can be stretched, especially effects can be stretched on a clip and shortened. So there would be a conflict between the retiming that it's saying and what's happening when it's applied to a clip, and could be stretched or
seems
squashed.
That seems logical. I mean,
I think it was probably a difficult thing to make happen. So the retiming, because I would love to do some stuff with retiming behaviors in motion to create effects, like special retiming effects in Final Cut Pro 10.
Yeah.
But those are off the table. When, why would I use a quantized or logarithmic parameter behavior?
You ever use one?
Yeah, you got me. I've seen those. I haven't played with them. There's a great example of a clamp. There's one called Clamp. In fact, if I won't do the whole thing here, but if we go to the library, just to show folks what he's talking about here, if it's a this is Chris Northcross. If we go to parameter behaviors, we've got all these guys. So I'll make them big just so we can kind of see them. There's all these parameter behaviors, and what I use all the time are ones like oscillate or wriggle, track. But there's some clamp actually will stop a value at a certain place, and it's good for things that are falling and hitting like a floor. You can have them clamp their distance they move in Y, so they stop moving down. So that's kind of interesting. But logarithmic, it's a scaling function. You know, you could create something that scales. When things scale logarithmically, that's the way they look in real life. If something is moving towards you or away from you in Z space, directly toward you or away from you, its scale is changing logarithmically. So that's a way you could use a behavior instead of keyframes to create motion that looked realistic. So there is an answer for logarithmic. Exponential is a little more moving towards you, logarithmic away from you, because exponential and logarithms are the inverse of each other. So those two kind of make sense. Quantize, I think, stops things at a specific step function. So like if you've done keyframes in Final Cut, right? I'm sorry, in Motion, right? So yep. I could turn on this and move this, and I'm going to move back here and create a little motion path. So now I've got a little motion path this moves along. I don't know why we're not seeing it. Show overlays, animation path. We should be seeing the animation path right now. But the thing is, if I reveal that in the keyframe editor, window keyframe editor, and let's just turn on X so we can see just X. So we've got this smooth curve, but we could change the interpolation there to constant. Oh, it didn't even do it. Look at that. Oh, I did that to the wrong one. Interpolation, constant. And now we have this step function, so the values change instantaneously. So it starts here and suddenly pops over there and suddenly pops over there. So that's the same as the quantized behavior. So for every behavior, they're usually doing something that you could do with keyframing. So I'm quantizing this motion so that it moves only in jumps. Am I making sense at all?
It makes sense to me.
Okay, so if I play this back now, it's there, now it's there, and then boom, now it's there. Okay, it's only jumped from one place to the next. So it's the same idea with the quantized behaviors. That may be a way. I usually just keyframe though. So, man, a lot of in Final Cut Pro 10, I would like all effects to be keyframable in the video animation UI. Now, it's only opacity that can be keyframed. Eric, I agree with you.
Yes, I agree.
Totally agree. Can you just show the...
Basically, what he's saying is...
In the video animation there...
You Control V, and you have the video animation editor, and there's certain things that can be animated and pretty easy by clicking this button.
Yeah, you can open up opacity.
You can open up bar. You can animate, and then I think you can also
option click,
and you can add keyframes. And what he's saying is these other features. Why aren't the transformations
like position? Yeah, if you could choose position.
Why are there not rubber bands and sliders right here to do that? I agree. That would be very handy to have that right there in the video animation editor.
Another thing I'd like to see in there is a replace edit that doesn't require dragging. Because right now you can do replace edit by dragging one clip down on top of another and waiting for the pop-up menu and replace from start, replace from end. But sometimes you just want to do a replace edit with a keyboard shortcut, or sometimes you set in and out points in the event browser that are so close to each other, when you try to grab the clip to drag it down, you end up messing up the in and out points. So you just can't you can't click on it. You just can't click on it. Makes it difficult to do.
That would be a good feature.
Alex says you can apply retiming behaviors to clones of groups, and that is true. Sometimes cloning allows you to apply retiming behavior. Whether you can publish that or not, I'm not so sure about. I saw a post on Pro Video Coalition about exporting from Cinema 4D to into Motion. I've been learning Blender 3D and was wondering if the same time of interaction is possible. It's Chris again. It is not. So Cinema 4D allows you to export a motion project, which contains all the camera and light data, which you can then drop into Motion, and then you can add text or video, so you can have true 3D models and lights and textures from Cinema 4D combined in Motion with video in Motion or text in Motion, which is cool.
It is.
It's very cool, but you cannot do it with Blender. That I know. I haven't tried it with Blender, but I'm almost positive you can't export a motion project from it. FFCP supports MXF file format. I guess the question, does it? If not, then how can I make it work with Final Cut Pro? That's one of the coming features, right, that Apple announced in the next version.
Let's see. It says MXF plugin support. They announced that, so it's coming. You can't do it right now. You have to use, especially, if you're coming off a Sony, XD-Cam, Final Cut Pro doesn't know what to do with that. You have to suck it in using the Sony transfer utility, and then turn it into a QuickTime. Wrap that XD-Cam data in a QuickTime wrapper, and then bring it in. But according to Apple, that's on the list of things that are coming. By the way, I don't know if you noticed this, but under Preferences, I haven't noticed anything missing here. Is that, remember when you're importing, there used to be an item here that said correct for, or I can't remember what the
rolling shutter.
Rolling shutter, and
it was a stabilizing.
Stabilizing. Notice it's not there.
Yeah, this is actually very interesting.
This is not there anymore. Mm-hmm. It's just not there. What was happening is, pretend those checkboxes were there. If you were analyzing it for shaky cam or rolling shutter, Final Cut Pro would look at analyze the entire clip. Uh-huh. And it just wasn't as efficient, and a lot of times it would give inaccurate data, as opposed to doing
when it's looking at the whole clip, there could be radically different things going on in the clip in terms of motion shake or rolling shutter.
Exactly.
Artifacts. Okay.
So you could still do it, but now you can do it on a clip by clip basis, and then when you analyze for shaky cam, rolling shutter, you could do it on the clip rather than on the entire clip. Yeah. And you simply do that in the inspector the way you would. See, there it is. There's your stabilization rolling shutter. So now when you choose it here, you're just analyzing that portion.
That piece of it.
That piece of it, yeah.
So they took it out of the doing it when you bring it in, and which didn't necessarily apply it, right? It analyzed it, but then you could turn it on if you wanted to.
Correct.
But now you can just do it on one little piece after the fact.
Yeah.
While you're on that subject, can you bring up import files? Because one thing I noticed, there's a couple new Apple knowledge base articles that came out, and one of them talked about. Can you just zoom in on the transcoding? So normally, this transcoding, you have an option to create optimized media when you bring media in. But now, according to the new knowledge base article, certain formats will not. Final Cut Pro 10 will not let you optimize those.
That's right.
XD-Cam,
HDV, and DV.
Yep. Now, but from testing this, we looked at this morning, and that button was not dimmed. The knowledge base article says that this button is dimmed, and you will no longer be able to choose to optimize those media types.
Particularly XD-Cam.
Particularly XD-Cam. In our experience, because we did this morning with something from XD-Cam, from an EX3 and an EX1, that button was still selectable, but when you select it, nothing happens.
Yeah, there's nothing happens.
So it could be confusing to people because you're thinking that it still works the way it used to work in 10.0.3 and earlier. You check that, nothing ever gets created anymore. Yeah. And what Apple said basically is, look, it's preferred to work natively in XD-Cam.
Yeah.
And I was a little surprised by that. But I guess with the power of the processor and the ability to handle XD-Cam, it's like, no problem, we'll just stick natively with it.
Right.
Because I just did a big a multicam shoot thing. I had to do it in 7 because there was 7, and we converted everything.
Well,
in
it's
7.
interesting. In version 7, Sony had a transfer plugin that worked inside the log and transfer window.
Yes.
And so all of your XDCam media would show up in the log and transfer window, and then as you suck it in, it would simply take the data out of the MXF file and put it in a QuickTime wrapper, and then Final Cut Pro could deal with it because now it's in a QuickTime,
Right.
but it's still the native XDCam, whatever the 422 MPEG variant. Because the codec, it's still the native stuff. It's just that you can't do it directly in Final Cut Pro 10 now. Right. I mean, the assumption I read into this is that you're going to have the means to just mount your S/S card, see the MXF data, and just bring it in, and it wraps it into a QuickTime wrapper or something, some sort of wrapper.
So Ian Anderson is telling us that the keyboard shortcuts for replace are to replace from start is Option R, and replace is Shift R. Awesome. That sounds familiar. I think I had forgotten that.
Yep.
So that's good. And I'm going to go back and test that because I forgot that, and I've been dragging those damn things. Mark, can you quickly demonstrate how to effectively adjust a 3D camera's animation path? Maybe I'm not doing it right, but it's really hard to control it. Every time I try, it goes berserk, so I always end up undoing it. If you're keyframing the camera to move along an animation path, I agree that can be very difficult to do. When I'm animating 3D cameras in motion, I almost always use behaviors.
Yeah.
Specifically framing behavior,
yeah.
Other ones too, but the framing behavior...
You just turn on the record light and just do framing behaviors. Move the playhead, framing behavior, move the playhead, framing behavior, right? That's how I learned how to do it.
So the framing behavior is in behaviors and under camera, framing, and it gives you a great deal of control of exactly how the camera moves. And you can control not just how it frames the object that it's coming to, but its motion path to get there. And I go over in detail on this. In fact, you can just go to rippletraining.com. There's free excerpts of the movies, and you'll get a totally good idea of exactly how this works. We also have done several episodes on MacBreak Studio of exactly how to use
that's a really good point. We're up to 168 episodes now. If you go back, if you subscribe to the podcast, which is what I'd recommend, you could go back and look at the titles and what's in them. And the thing is, there's a lot of Motion 4 stuff you were doing, but that stuff is still just as applicable. I mean, the interface has changed, but you need to go back and find all of Mark's tutorial MacBreak Studios that deal with the camera, because really, really good stuff.
So, and there's a couple that specifically talk about the framing behavior and using null objects to sort of adjust the framing behavior that will help you. In Final Cut 7, I had a project file that had a bin layout that was standardized, a bin for graphics, a bin for raw footage, etc. Any suggestions on how to do this in Final Cut Pro 10?
Well,
got to get familiar with events. Well, keyword collections.
Yeah, look, here's what you can do. Let's see. I'll look at 10. So I'm going to go ahead and create. I'm going to create a new event. All right. Make a new event.
And you might want to zoom in there for a.
All right. So
see.
We're just going to. The option key is the zoom, which is weird. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Steve, and remove that. Now, if you want to make a keyword collection, you right-click. So you don't have bins in Final Cut 10. You have keyword collections. So
say again, Karen.
So there's that. So I'm going to say this is FX.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to right-click on this. Say new keyword comes by Shift Command K. Let's say this music, and that's a Shift Command K, and we'll call this I don't know, graphics. So I think this is what he's talking about. You've got different, essentially a folder construct, right? Now you could duplicate this entire event. Right?
Yep.
That's one way you could do it. You could duplicate the entire event. You could actually duplicate these individual keyword collections. So.
And why would you want to duplicate them?
Well, in particular. Let's say you had a keyword collection. It's not so much keyword. Well, let's look at a keyword collection. A keyword collection is a collection based on how a clip is tagged or tagged a specific way.
Right.
So as you put clips in here, you can actually duplicate these. Once you set them up, you can then duplicate them. But I wouldn't set them up like this. Let me see here. Let me go ahead and create a smart. I'm going to just do something really quick. Just want to make sure there is a duplicate command in here, which there's duplicate smart command. See, all of these can be duplicated. It's interesting. There's not a duplicate command for. Okay, this is why I had to do that. Run through that exercise for a moment. The thing is I use mostly smart collections to set up my media because smart collections can define things. You could set up rules for them. Like you can.
They're so much more powerful than a folder.
They are because you could essentially say I want all my audio, for example, and maybe all my multi-camera layered graphics to come in. And so you could set this up so this keyword, so anytime you imported a graphic, this is now PSD. So this is why this is way better than using these keywords. So when you import a graphic, you've set up a rule that basically says when a layered graphic gets imported, make sure that it goes into this smart collection. And the reason I'd rather do it this way is because these smart collections can be duplicated across projects. So I've got multiple projects. You can select a bunch of them, and then you can then drag them into another project. So now look at this. So you can select them and drag. So now I have those
keyword collections. You can too.
You could certainly do that. But as I was saying, they're not as effective as smart collections. Smart collections are more powerful because they're smart. You get intelligence. They determine what goes into what. And so if I took the time to set up a smart collection with certain rules, I can then just drag it into any event and then just have
it'll automatically populate with everything that matches
for that event. Exactly.
And the whole idea of having this sort of either a smart collection or just a keyword collection is that you can have clips that exist in more than one place. I mean, to me, that's what's so powerful about it. And it's true, if you are separating things out by graphics versus audio, you probably won't have the same clip in both of those, but you may have categories of 2 shots, or interview shots, or night shots, and you might have something that is both a 2-shot and a night shot. And because you aren't restricted to, which folder am I going to put this clip in, I have to decide, you can assign it keywords based on all this criteria, and that
smart collections.
Well, it doesn't even have to be. If you assign it a keyword of effects, and you also assign it a keyword of a 2-shot, it'll show up in both of those keyword collections.
Correct.
So you're always sure of getting every clip showing up where you want it to in multiple locations, which you can never do with folders.
Correct.
But it does take a little while to get your head around it, but you can kind of think of those smart collections or those keyword collections as sophisticated folders. And you could just name them the way he had here.
See, like I have,
I just can't read it. But FX, audio, graphics.
Yeah, see, I just set up a smart collection that's only looking for audio, right?
Okay.
And what's really great is I can call this, audio or just music or what have you. So it's only looking for certain things.
Only audio files.
Only audio files. So every time I import them, they'll go right into
in there.
Right in there. I don't even have to think about it.
Yep. Do you have any idea why a clip in the timeline would not be scalable?
I'm not sure what you mean scalable.
I'm assuming it means you can't transform the scale. So if you select a clip in the timeline and then you have to turn on the transform effect at the bottom left of the viewer, right there, then you should be able to grab a handle, and those handles will do it non-proportionally, but the corner ones will do it proportionally. They're just very hard to grab.
Yeah, you gotta.
There you go. Yeah, so you should be able to do that for video, graphics, anything, compound clips.
But you have to make sure this is on.
You have to turn on the transform effect if you want it to do it that way. Otherwise, you can just go to the inspector. So my answer would be, if we're understanding the question correctly, if you might by scalable by changing the scale of the clip, you need to turn on the transform effect to do it in the viewer, or with the transform effect turned off, you can just go to the inspector to the video tab and change the scale, and that should work. If it doesn't, I don't know why that would be.
No, I don't see under what circumstances it wouldn't. The scale, the little drag handles wouldn't show up.
Yeah, I don't know why that would be. So just a time check. We're going to go about 10 more minutes here. We've got a couple more questions to answer. So if you have something you want to ask, we'll do our best to answer it, but you will need to get it in now and vote it up if you see it in there, and we'll get to your question here on Final Cut or motion related kind of questions. So dropping frames. I have a 27-inch iMac. It doesn't say what year it is. It's a 1 gig graphics card, and when I put all my media into Final Cut Pro 10, I import it as optimized and then transcoded to proxy. And the problem I'm still having is that a majority of my media is blue, and I cannot see my media in the event. That's
Blue?
Jake. Yeah, I guess he's getting a blue screen. So one thing, that makes me think of something.
Yes.
Apple put out a knowledge base article, I think it was this week, acknowledging that in certain situations you will get a blue screen, and the fix is to make sure you're running Final Cut Pro 10.0.4
Right.
and Motion 5.0.3. So
I
if
don't
you're
know
not...
if you're getting blue
Yeah.
frames. That's some sort of a.
It sounds
IO.
very odd.
Yeah, I don't.
But I would definitely, first thing I would check is like what version of Final Cut Pro 10 you're working.
Yeah.
And one way, if it's 10.0.3 or earlier, just go to the App Store and click Update. That's actually one thing that I love about this new paradigm. If there's anything wrong with the app, it's all self-contained. You can throw it away and download it again from the App Store.
Here's
It's
a perfect example. Today we got in here, the machine we're working on at 10.03.
It had 10.03.
We just assumed it had 4, and we're looking at, we started to download it from the App Store. It's did 23
It's
minutes.
half an hour to grow.
We're like half hour. So what I did is I hooked up my laptop, and I just I plugged the FireWire 800 out of my laptop into the Mac Pro Tower, and I rebooted the Mac with the T key held down. That's called target disk mode. So the hard drive of my laptop showed up on the Mac Pro, and I just went into my applications folder, found Final Cut Pro 10.04, just the app, drug it over to the Mac Tower, drug it over there and able to copy it and launch it. So
and you're up and running.
What you're actually looking at right now is Final Cut Pro 10.4 that I drug off of my laptop onto the tower. You could never do that with previous versions of Final Cut.
Yep.
So it's a big lifesaver.
Yep. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question about, I have a Natris Curves plugin, and when he updated it, the old version was still in the effects browser marked obsolete. I went into the Finder to delete them manually, but they show back up in Final Cut Pro 10 every time. What gives? So that's from Eric. So here's the deal. He's talking about a plugin that is installed by FX Factory.
Right.
If you have an FX Factory plugin, going into the Finder to delete it doesn't do anything. FX Factory will look and say it's missing, and it'll just install it again. You need to launch the FX Factory application, and there you can turn off the ones that you don't want to see.
Yeah, there's a checkbox.
Yeah. So with our callouts product, for example, one thing I've heard from people is like, I want to test your callouts product, I want to buy your callouts product, but they install FX Factory and it installs 50 different plugins in trial mode. And there's some great stuff in there, but sometimes it's just too much to look at. So you can launch FX Factory and you can turn off anything you don't want to see. But the key is to launch the FX Factory app. And make sure you're on the latest, which is 3.0.4 as of this week. Are there any secrets to getting match color to work?
What doesn't work?
It works for me. It depends on, you can only push it so far.
Right.
It really depends.
I'd have to see it. I mean, if it depends on what you're trying to match.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any good examples here. Let's see. Let's see here. I'm pretty. It's pretty interesting. Let's open up this here. Yeah, everything's offline. Isn't that nice? We're getting the nice red Macy's stripe.
Yeah.
So,
Macy's.
I call it the Macy's symbol.
Macy's, that's awesome. That's awesome. Are green frames, this is from Michael, are green frames included in the Blue Frame Knowledge Base article? No. When I've seen green frames, there's usually a graphics card issue. So what I would check is if you are using...
I just saw green frames today.
I'm seeing it in exported QuickTime Movie when using QuickTime 7, and I'm using QuickTime 7 because it has some advantages over QuickTime 10 that we've talked about in some shows. But I've seen it if there's a graphics card issue, and I would definitely check to see if you're using a compatible graphics card. As of Final Cut Pro 10, cards that were compatible with earlier versions of 10 and Motion are no longer compatible. In particular, the Radeon 1900 is no longer listed as a compatible card. So that's the first thing I would check. Otherwise, I'm not really sure. And this is, you probably know this. When I create a compound clip or project, is there a way to change the size to something non-standard?
Yeah, There is a way to do it. I watched a tutorial on the cow. You can actually do it in the event library. I have to go through the steps, and that was asked last time. I know you can do it.
I don't remember
I've never had occasion to make non-standard clip size, but if you just go to Creative Cow, there's a guy on there that has a series of Final Cut 10 tutorials. He walks you through the steps. That's all I can tell you. I've not done it. I haven't any need to do it, but it can be done. But it's like standing on your left foot, showing salt over your shoulder and barking at the moon. It can be done, but it's so convoluted, the workflow, that it's just like whatever. I'm not even gonna,
Should we show them the browser trick where you can add your own content to these browsers? Just real quick.
Go ahead. Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, that's cool.
So let's just set it up a little bit first. So this is something that we discovered recently. So you've got this music and sound browser that contains all your iTunes material. And then you have this Photos browser, and if it contains iPhoto and Aperture library stuff, which is cool, but you can put your own stuff in here too. And it's not immediately obvious to do that. And the trick is you have to pull this little bar down to reveal all the content. And there's no content on this particular machine. But if you go to the Finder, so I'm going to go to the Finder, and is my drive in here? Yeah. So in the Finder, if you select, so I have some stock shots here that I'd want to include, okay? So I'm just going to drag this folder, I'm going to switch back to Final Cut, and I'm going to drop it right in this Photos browser. Now, there's a new thing called Folders, and that is my folder, and if I select that, all my stock shots are now available right there in that browser.
So you don't have to have them in an event. They're just
right, because you might have certain things like some stock footage or photos or whatever that you go to all the time, and you don't want to feel like, what event did I put those in?
Right.
You've got them right here in the browser. So not only are all your iPhoto and Aperture things there, content, anything you want, any other graphics you want to put can show up in there. The same with music. You can put your own sound effects in here. The key is to drag down this little bar right here to reveal this area and drag a folder in.
Yep. That's nice.
So a little bit of a non sequitur, but I wanted to get that out there just before we wrapped up. I think that's about it. It's about 7:30. Anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. We got some new stuff coming down the pike. Smoke tutorials, new Final Cut tutorials coming.
Yep, Smoke, Final Cut. And for next week, we're here in right near San Francisco. Next week is WWDC. A lot of rumors about potential new things coming out. We're excited to see what happens in the next week.
Yep.
And we have a bunch of new MacBreak Studios coming out. We do those every week. Take a look for those. You can find MacBreak Studio on the iTunes. Just go to the store, the iTunes store, and search for MacBreak Studio. Please check out Ripple Training for our tutorials. And we'll be back here probably in August.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Probably towards the end of August. We usually do this like the third Thursday of the month. So thank you very much. Oh, Twitter, yes. Yeah. So if you want to know how, Carolyn's talking in my ear here and reminding me, follow Ripple Training to find out when we're doing the show again is the best thing to do. At Ripple Training, right?
Yep.
Just at Ripple Training. I'm at Markspen if you want motion information. And we'll let you know when we're up here again and doing the show. Thank you very much for watching. And if you're watching from places where you're up very late, thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Feedback always welcome. We'll have this show up on YouTube to watch within a week or so. So if you find it value, you could pass it around from there. So thank you very much for watching. And Steve and Mark saying,
thanks for watching.
See you later.